Welcome to my channel Starlight Sci-Fi Stories. Thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe. The stars above Korath 9 shimmered in icy blues and cold whites, distant suns twisting the horizon into impossible shapes. The planet's surface was jagged, a frozen wasteland of black ice and crystalline spires, pierced by the skeletal remains of 1,000 abandoned mining colonies. High above, alien patrol ships circled silently, their triangular hulls reflecting starlight like polished obsidian. On the edge of a crater, Lieutenant Adrian Voss crouched behind the fractured metal of a downed transport. His breath fogged in the bitter air, rising and dispersing into the endless night. Across the crater, the drones moved in a silent, coordinated wave, sleek, six-legged, and armed with plasma emitters that could vaporize a human in seconds. Voss' status came the crackle of his comm, muffled but urgent. "Cut off," Adrian whispered. "No line to command. They've sealed the perimeter. I think they know we're here." The alien threat was unlike anything humanity had faced before. The Viharan were warriors, yes, but they were also strategists. Not a single strike was wasted. Not a single move left uncalculated. Entire fleets had fallen to them without a warning. And now, this icy rock, long thought abandoned, had become their staging ground for an assault on human colonies. Adrian's eyes scanned the horizon. In the distance, a faint glow betrayed the location of a Viharan command tower. Energy pulses rippled from its apex, sending waves of force into the surrounding ice. Each pulse disrupted human comms, each ripple a reminder that stealth was temporary. He swallowed hard, one man against a war machine, yet something deep inside refused to surrender. He reached into his pack and retrieved a small device, a beacon. Not just any beacon, it was an experimental human tech designed to hack and disrupt enemy drones remotely. Command had said it might buy enough time for evacuation. Theoretically. Adrian smiled grimly. "Theory doesn't get medals," he muttered. "Action does." Suddenly, a Viharan patrol emerged from behind a spire, glowing eyes scanning. They were massive, taller than any human soldier, their limbs armored with interlocking plates of unknown alloy. Their claws left deep gouges in the ice as they moved. Adrian froze. The patrol paused, sensors sweeping the crater, then continued. Just another patrol, for now. He activated the beacon. Blue light pulsed from the device, syncing with the alien signals. For a heartbeat, nothing happened. Then the drones stuttered. One faltered mid-stride. Another twisted unnaturally before collapsing in a burst of sparks. Adrian's grin widened. Not bad for one human. But the victory was brief. From the top of the command tower, a Viharan officer observed. His armor was taller, blacker, crowned with spikes that glowed faintly violet. With a gesture, he directed the drones to reset. Adrian's device fizzled, sparks sputtering, useless against the officer's command override. Adrian ran, not toward safety, there was none, but toward opportunity. Behind the tower, ice caverns yawned like open maws. If he could reach the cavern network, he might slip through the Viharan perimeter, reach the central colony, and warn humanity. The first drone spotted him. Its plasma emitter flared, scorching ice in its path. Adrian rolled, took cover, and fired a pulse from his modified rifle. The shot glanced off the drone's armor. Not enough. The humans had no weapons to pierce Viharan plating directly. They had to be clever. He looked around fast. Rocks, jagged ice, a broken mining drill, improvised cover, improvised weapons. That was humanity's edge, adaptation, ingenuity, unpredictability. The Viharan could calculate outcomes, but they had not accounted for improvisation. Not truly. He sprinted, rolling behind a crystalline spire. Another drone fell in pursuit, its claws tearing through the ice. Adrian tapped a small charge into its leg joint. A muffled explosion, and the drone toppled into the frozen crater. 2 down, dozens more waiting. Above, the Viharan officer's voice echoed, not through sound but a telepathic pulse, vibrating through the icy air. "Human, you cannot survive this." Adrian froze. The words were heavy, not just a warning but a calculated attempt at intimidation. But he did not flinch. Human. The term carried weight, yes, but it also carried history. Every human who had faced impossible odds, every battle lost and turned, every colony saved by wit and courage. He felt it now. They underestimate us. The first cavern loomed ahead. Adrian dove inside, the walls glittering with frozen minerals. The drones hesitated at the mouth, scanning, then advanced. He ran deeper, activating the beacon again, smaller and more precise. This time he linked it to the cavern's natural magnetic fields. Sparks flew, and the nearest drone slammed into the wall. The others hesitated, confused. Inside, the cavern opened into a massive underground facility, long abandoned by miners but intact. Power cells flickered faintly along the walls, remnants of automated machinery. Adrian's mind raced. He could set up an ambush, lure the drones into traps, buy precious hours. Humanity survived not by brute strength but by exploiting every advantage, every flaw, every angle. Then he heard it, a soft, clicking rhythm that echoed from the deeper tunnels. Something large, something alive. He froze. From the shadows emerged a Viharan patrol, and behind them the officer himself, gliding with an unearthly grace, armor gleaming like black ice. "You survive longer than expected," the officer said, voice carrying through thought as easily as sound. "But even your cleverness is finite." Adrian's hand went to his belt, feeling the pulse grenades. Improvised, dangerous, but humanity thrived on danger. He grinned faintly. "Finite," he whispered back. "You're about to learn why humans never give up." As the officer raised a clawed hand, the cavern exploded in a storm of fire and sparks. The beacon had overloaded the drones, sending a pulse that even the Viharan could not fully control. The officer staggered, surprised. Adrian rolled to cover, then pressed forward. Every step was calculated, every movement precise. He wasn't just running, he was hunting. From the shadows, a second pulse flashed across the ice, revealing hidden passages. Adrian's mind raced, escape routes, ambush points, calculated chaos. The Viharan were strong, but humans were smarter. Humans adapted. Humans survived. The deeper tunnels of Korath 9 felt alive. Ice crystals hummed faintly as if resonating with Adrian's pulse grenades. The Viharan patrols had regrouped, but they moved cautiously now, uncertain in the maze. Every corner hid a trap, every shadow a potential strike. Adrian paused, listening. Distant footsteps, but not just drones. Viharan foot soldiers, fully armored, patrolling. He tapped his wrist console, sending signals to the remaining beacon fragments. Sparks leapt along the walls, short-circuiting drone sensors, creating blind spots. One by one, the patrols misstepped. "They think they see everything, but they don't see me." He rounded a crystalline pillar, revealing the heart of the colony, the central power hub. It was dormant but intact. A network of old human tech capable of powering a ship or, with some work, sending a pulse across the planetary grid. A warning, a signal. Humanity needed this to survive. Adrian worked quickly, fingers flying across ancient controls. His pulse grenades and beacon fragments hummed, ready to activate. Above ground, the Viharan would notice soon. They always did. But here in the shadows, humans had one advantage: unpredictability. Then came the rumble. The ground shook, ice cracking. The Viharan officer descended from the upper tunnels, massive, imposing. "Enough games," he said, voice vibrating the walls. "You will surrender." Adrian looked up. No fear, only calculation. His hand flicked a switch. The beacon activated fully, cascading pulses through the ice. The officer staggered, unprepared. Adrian sprinted, leaping across fissures and collapsing columns. Every step was human ingenuity in motion, speed, reflex, improvisation. The officer recovered, claws flashing. But humans were not easy prey. Adrian used the tunnel's geometry, leading the officer into a series of narrow corridors, twisting sharply. The Viharan, tall and rigid, could not keep pace. A final chamber opened. Adrian dropped the pulse grenade, detonating it near the officer. The shockwave sent him crashing into the wall, dazed. Adrian moved to the control console, sending a planetary signal, an encrypted beacon to Earth. A warning, a call, a challenge. The officer struggled to rise, claws tearing into ice. Adrian stepped forward, unarmed but fearless. "Humans survive," he said simply, "because we refuse to quit." The officer's eyes glowed, fury and disbelief mingling. "Impossible." Adrian smiled faintly. Not impossible, just human. Then the cave trembled as the remaining drones faltered, the pulses from Adrian's beacon cascading through their network. Systems overloaded. Sparks flew. The Viharan, masters of strategy, were caught in chaos engineered by a single human mind. Adrian used the confusion to escape the facility. Emerging into the frozen wasteland, he watched as the Viharan regrouped. They were powerful, organized, deadly, but flawed, overconfident, unprepared for ingenuity. He activated the planetary signal fully. Across the stars, human colonies would receive the warning. The Viharan were coming, and humanity would be ready. From the ridge, Adrian looked back at the icy horizon, the shattered remains of patrols, the glowing towers of the Viharan command. One human against a galactic force, and still undefeated. Because humanity was never strongest in numbers, nor in weapons. Humans survived because they adapted, because they innovated, because they refused to surrender. Even against impossible odds, one human mind could topple a calculated war machine. Adrian took a deep breath. Somewhere out there, command would respond. Reinforcements would arrive. But even alone, humans had made their stand, and that stand would echo across the galaxy. Never underestimate a human. Never underestimate courage. Never underestimate the impossible made real by ingenuity. Above him, the stars glimmered cold and distant. But below, in the heart of the ice and shadows, humanity's defiance burned brighter than any beacon. The Viharan had come to conquer. Humanity had reminded them why they would never succeed. Adrian turned and walked toward the horizon, one soldier, one human, but the last human beacon shining bright against the darkness. The signal Adrian sent had begun to ripple across space. Human fleets in nearby systems detected it, and messages raced through the galactic network. Viharan forces active on Korath 9. Immediate response required. But Adrian had no time to wait for reinforcements. Above the frozen ridges, the Viharan were regrouping, and their commander, shaken but far from defeated, had called in orbital strike drones. Sleek, black ships descended like predators, plasma emitters glowing in deadly arcs. Adrian crouched behind a fractured spire of ice. His breath came in shallow puffs, the air so cold it burned his lungs. Every instinct screamed retreat, but there was no retreat this time. The colony, the warning, the signal, they all depended on him surviving the coming onslaught. He glanced down at the beacon device, now fully integrated with the cavern's magnetic field. It had already disabled dozens of patrol drones, but the Viharan were adaptive. They would override, recalibrate, find a way. Humans could not win by force. They had to win by thinking faster, acting smarter. The first orbital drone fired. Its plasma beam struck the ice, shattering the surface in jagged shards. Adrian rolled, sliding across a frozen slope, and narrowly avoided being vaporized. He counted the seconds in his head. Every orbital strike moved on predictable arcs. Every predictable arc could be exploited. He sprinted toward a ridge that rose sharply against the horizon. Using the ice formations as cover, he moved diagonally, forcing the drones to overshoot. Then, in one fluid motion, he leapt from a ridge onto a thin ice bridge spanning a deep crevasse. The bridge groaned but held. Behind him, a plasma beam burned a hole through the ice where he had just stood. Adrian reached the crest and looked down. Below, the command tower still pulsed with energy, the officer recovering from the earlier chaos. But the humans had one more card, Adrian's ingenuity. He tapped a small module from his belt. It was crude, jury-rigged, but effective, a pulse amplifier. Linking it to the planetary beacon, he prepared to unleash a chain reaction that could cripple the Viharan network for minutes, maybe hours. Minutes mattered. Every second the drones faltered was a second human fleets could respond, a second more colonies could evacuate. Humanity survived not by being invincible, but by being clever and relentless. The officer spotted him, massive, towering, glowing eyes fixed on Adrian. "You think this will save you?" he bellowed, voice echoing across the frozen wasteland. "You are only one human." Adrian smirked faintly. One human is more than enough. He pressed the activation key. Energy pulsed outward from the beacon, traveling through the ice and magnetic conduits. Drones faltered, orbital sensors scrambled, the command tower sparking in wild arcs. The officer roared, claws striking the ice, sending shockwaves across the ridge. But Adrian was already moving, sliding down the slope, dodging falling shards and sprinting toward the weakened tower. Inside the command tower, systems blinked erratically. Adrian pressed against the armored doors, opening the control panel. It was designed for Viharan access only, but humans were excellent at bypassing systems they weren't meant to touch. He jammed a few connectors, rerouted the energy flow, and initiated a manual override. The tower's main emitter roared to life, firing a pulse that disrupted all Viharan drones in the vicinity. They stumbled mid-stride, colliding with one another, falling into fissures or frozen lakes below. The officer, staggering, tried to recalibrate, but his systems were already jammed by Adrian's device. Adrian's mind worked fast. The tower could be used to send a countersignal, not just defensive but offensive. He linked the pulse to the magnetic fields surrounding the colony, creating a temporary electromagnetic storm. Drones crashed, ships faltered in orbit, and the officer's command structure collapsed. One human, one clever device had turned the tide of battle. But victory was not yet secure. The officer surged forward, faster than Adrian expected, claws slicing through the frozen air. Adrian leapt to the side, narrowly avoiding a deadly strike. He rolled across a patch of ice, then sprang upward, using momentum to tackle the officer. The two collided in a burst of force, the impact echoing across the cavern and icy plains. Adrian struck where humans always found advantage, weak points, joints, angles the Viharan had ignored. His fist connected with the officer's shoulder plating, sending sparks and mechanical whirring as servos overloaded. The officer staggered, unprepared for such precision. "You fight differently," the officer growled, struggling to regain control. "You are not like the others." Adrian's grin was quiet, resolute. "That's the difference between humans and everyone else. We adapt, we survive, we win." With one final maneuver, Adrian redirected the officer's momentum into a frozen wall. The officer crashed, dazed, his systems offline. The remaining drones, still scrambling from the pulse, were no longer coordinated. Humanity had turned the enemy's strength against itself. Adrian stood on the ridge, breathing heavily, frost covering his armor. He looked out over the battlefield. Shattered drones, flickering energy pulses, the officer incapacitated. And then, a glimmer of light from the far horizon. Human ships responding to the beacon, engines blazing, fleets preparing to strike back. Even alone, Adrian had bought humanity time. Even alone, he had proven that the impossible could be achieved with courage and ingenuity. He had faced a superior enemy, calculated every move, exploited every flaw, and survived. The Viharan would retreat. They always did when confronted with unpredictability. But the message was clear. Humans were not weak. Humans were not predictable. Humans were unstoppable when driven by ingenuity and determination. Adrian activated the planetary beacon one last time, sending a clear signal across the stars. "We are here. We are prepared. You will not win." Above him, the cold stars shimmered. Below him, the icy wasteland was quiet, the remnants of battle frozen in place. Adrian turned toward the horizon, toward the incoming fleets, toward the promise of reinforcements. He had done more than survive. He had reminded the galaxy why humans were feared, respected, and never underestimated. He allowed himself a brief smile. One human, one beacon, one defiance. And yet that defiance would echo across the galaxy. It would inspire fleets, colonies, and soldiers to fight harder, think faster, and never ever give up. Because humans were not just a species. Humans were a force of ingenuity, courage, and relentless determination. And as long as humans existed, no enemy, no matter how powerful, could ever claim victory. Adrian turned back to the frozen plains, the battle behind him, the stars above him, and whispered quietly, more to himself than anyone else. "We are humans, we survive, we endure, and we always fight back." The first human ships broke the horizon, engines lighting the sky with a brilliant flare. Adrian knew this was only the beginning. The Viharan would return, but humanity would be ready. Not because they were stronger in number, but because humans were smarter, braver, and never gave up. And somewhere, deep in the galaxy, a single human mind had proven a truth that could never be erased. The universe might have monsters, armies, and masters, but it had never seen a human give up. Adrian raised his fist to the sky, a silent salute to those who would come, and to the humans who would fight alongside him. The stars above Korath 9 reflected in his visor. The galaxy would remember this day. Humans had survived. Humans had triumphed. And the last human beacon had burned brighter than any enemy could extinguish. The end.